welcome to Get Glad About Distance Learning. And in here, if you could please use the chat box to share your name, your site, and your grade level, just so I can get an idea of who is here. And I am Jill Igarashi Takayama. I am the ELS from Walnut Elementary. And with me today, I also have Janine DeVera, who was my training partner for GLAD training, and she will be helping with the chat box. So if you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in there. So just letting you know that this meeting will be, that this meeting will be recorded. So if you do not want your face on the camera, go ahead and stop that video. And if you have any questions, post them in the chat box, similar to the style of a parking lot in an in-person PD. We will answer the questions. If they're super important, Janine will let me know and we'll stop and answer. If they can wait till the end, then we will answer them towards the end. So a little bit about me is I am Jill Igarashi Takayama. If you would like to email, you do have to type in that full last name there. But they did shorten our handle, wvusd.org, makes it a little easier to find me. I'm the elementary learning specialist at Walnut L. I'm going into my 6th year. I can't believe time has gone by so quickly. I'm a Tier 3 certified NTC Project GLAD trainer, as well as a Seesaw addict and a distance learning summer school survivor. So I've used a lot of these strategies in summer school, which was live full from 9 to 12:30, very similar to what we will be facing here in the fall. So I'm just going to be sharing how some of the strategies worked, but I will also let you know some things that didn't work so that you don't fall into the same little ditches that I did. I'm a lover of all things Hello Kitty, an avid Disneyland goer. I visited 60 times in 2019. And before closures, actually got there 10 times before middle of March. I'm also a professional garbage truck stalker. My son loves garbage trucks, and we are lucky enough to live on a city border and see them twice a week. Today, he's actually at his grandparents' house where it's garbage day, and he's stalking the trucks over there. So I made this little table here. It's 2 pages, and again, I uploaded the slides into the chat box. So you will have access to this table. There's no need to take a screenshot or anything. And I divided these strategies that we use in GLAD into the different ways that we might use them for distance learning. So our big party here, whole group, this could be live, which I highly recommend. The kids love to see you and be able to interact with you live. But you can also record a lot of these, since the participation between students isn't quite the same as in real life. So live or recorded on the big party activities would both work. Then we have the small party, which would be your small groups. I often use Jamboard and sometimes the whiteboard, but I did find whiteboard and Zoom. Sorry, the whiteboard does not work on Zoom with the Chromebooks. So Jamboard was the workaround for that, which is a Google component. Or the small party of 1, independent activities are what I will be showing you on Seesaw. And if you're not familiar with Seesaw, do not panic. There is a wonderful recorded session by Sylvia, Chen, and Janet On, who are both in this group here right now, explaining how to use Seesaw. There's also a live presentation going on now, but it will be recorded by Lauren Gugliotti, I believe, from Vehar. So if you love Seesaw, you can check it out through one of those recorded PDs. So we will go through all of these different activities throughout the presentation. Again, some of them you may be able to use without even doing a full GLAD unit, and those ones I've highlighted in yellow. So we'll start there. This is the 2nd page. Again, whole group, small group, independent activities. One thing that you can do that are GLAD strategies that does not require really any prep, but is wonderful for your students and great for management, are those 3 personal standards. Show respect, make good decisions, and solve your problems. The thing that you need to do is explicitly teach what those would look like in a virtual environment. And every morning, part of my morning meeting, with the students, we would talk about show respect, looks like having your camera on, eyes on the screen, making good decisions, not toggling between Minecraft and Roblox and the teacher teaching, solving your problems. If your internet connection is slow, let me know in the chat. Have your parents send me a text. That way we can solve these problems together. For Scouts, at first I thought, how am I going to use Scouts? The kids are not in the class, and Scouts are students who are helping you identify those 3 personal standards. And I found that it was amazing in virtual learning. I would ask for volunteers or select specific students, high achievers or kids who are easily disengaged, and ask them to help me identify other kids in our virtual classroom who are showing respect, making good decisions, or solving problems. And the Scouts were a perfect opportunity for students to have leadership, purpose, and connection, especially that connection to each other. The kids are not able to play at recess or chit chat like we do via instant messenger or a line or WhatsApp. A lot of them don't have that opportunity, especially our younger kids. So having them have positive communication between each other was such an important piece of our summer school. And then finally, shout outs are very similar to literacy awards. And in GLAD, literacy awards are things that a teacher would give to a student for demonstrating those 3 personal standards, or the Scouts would give it to the students for demonstrating the 3 personal standards. So for shout outs at the end, I would just share from my notebook amazing things that I saw the kids doing, very specific. I noticed that William was having a hard time figuring out how to do an assignment. So he asked me in a private chat on the side, and we were able to meet in a breakout room to solve that problem. I noticed that Brandon was having a hard time staying focused yesterday, but today his eyes are on the camera. I can see he's getting his work completed. So really being specific about the positive behaviors the students are making. I'm going to go into using some Seesaw activities. So what I have here is, I'm going to put that in the chat box there. If you can go to the link, app.seesaw.me, there is a code here, UIPVUHWJ, that you can use to sign into my demonstration classroom, where you will be able to access some example activities for you to try out as a student. That way you can see it from the student platform. And again, in the recorded session, you can find Janet On and Sylvia Chen's Let's Talk About Seesaw. And in that session, they will talk about student and teacher view. If you already have a Seesaw account, you can still sign into the demo class. You would log out as a teacher and log back in as a student. So go ahead and take a little time to do that. And once you get logged in, there should be 2 activities that I've scheduled to load earlier this morning, called All About Me, and another one is the SEL Mood Meter Check-In, something very similar to what the kids would have seen in class. And for those watching this recording, just note that the code listed here expires on August 8th, so you would not be able to access that. Also within the PDF, I embedded a link here where you can go to the actual Seesaw website where they have additional PDs. And hopefully you'll become an addict like so many of us. Once you start using it, you just cannot stop watching the PD videos, and you'll be amazed at all of the components that the program has to really help your kids learn. And it's a lot of fun on the teacher end too. This is a sample of the Google slide that I used for summer school. And it's just a way that you can see how you might want to organize a day. So I started my morning with a morning meeting, and I broke down, exactly what activities we were going to do. And it's important that the kids have an idea of what's coming for the day so they can prepare for it. I did have older children, third graders turning into fourth graders, so they were able to tell time, which makes a big difference. With the little ones, having them stay on camera and responding to your voice is probably going to be your way to go. For Seesaw, I was able to have them link into the program, but they are releasing a new update where you can link directly to an activity, which is going to be amazing. So I used a combination of Google Classroom and Seesaw for my GLAD platform. You can also use Flipgrid. I believe there's a recording on that as well, but that wasn't the avenue that I chose, so my focus will be on Seesaw activities as well as Google Classroom. The first activity that I did with the students was observation charts. And those of you that have practiced this in a regular classroom setting, you know that is 4 to 8 posters around your classroom with pictures that the students can observe. So what I did was I created those same exact pictures in Google Slides. And as a whole group, we met together and we looked at this Google slide. And we did the same thing we would do in class. We talked about what we observe, and observe are only things that we can see. And I provided concrete examples. For example, I observe a bird that has brown and cream feathers. I observe that it has 2 large eyes. Then we would talk about we wonders. We wonder where this bird lives, and then connect that with the prediction. You try to answer your own question. We predict that it lives in a tree because in the picture, I see it in the hole of a tree and I see it in the top of a tree. Then the students take that observation chart, and then I would change the pictures in my Seesaw activity. So I'm going to take us over to the Seesaw activity that the students would do on their own. And I'm using very similar Google Slides here. And what the students would do is the same thing. They would go in there and they would type out, I observe brown dogs and a white dog, or I wonder and I predict. The amazing thing is there's also a record feature so that I am able to listen to the students articulating what they want to share. And even if they don't have the ability to type or write what they want to say, because speaking comes faster than the reading and writing, they are able to still share what's in their mind. So even though they don't have a partner to talk to, they can still share what they want to share with me. And, whoa, there we go. So in the PDF that I sent out, you'll notice that when I hover over, there's a link embedded, and that link will take you to what I just went to, and you can save the activity into your account if you have a teacher account. And if you don't have a teacher account, I have a link at the end where you can sign up to create a teacher account. The next activity that I did was the inquiry chart. And with the inquiry chart, I just went old school. I used a simple sheet of paper and my document camera, and I wrote it out. So if you look at it, it looks pretty much like what you would see in a classroom. And I did this because of the use of color coding. It's a lot easier to do that with paper and pen. And the good part is, unlike in the regular classroom, I could do this on a regular small sheet of paper. I didn't have to use poster size because on my document camera, I could just zoom in with what we wanted to see. For those of you that don't want to use paper and pencil, you can easily use a Google Doc and just change the color of the font while you type this out. And then what I did was I took that inquiry chart template and created it in Seesaw for the students. So the template looks the same as what I have, and then they would type in or sketch in what they think they know about, and then on the other side, what they want to know about. And again, if they can't put everything in writing, they simply use the record button and can record what they want to share with me. So chants, another thing you can use without a full GLAD unit. I would use the chants during whole group for transitions, just to get up and move. And what I would do is I would post those lyrics in the chat box instead of screen sharing, just so that the kids could see me moving as well as see the lyrics to the chant. So we're actually going to get up and do this right now. Thank you, Janine. So we have educators here, educators there, educators, educators everywhere. Collaborative educators meeting virtually. Communicative educators deciding flexibly. Skillful educators teaching remotely. And tireless educators creating passionately. Educators within diverse cultural settings. Educators within Zoom meetings. Educators beside a cold cup of coffee. And educators in classrooms preparing for students. Educators here, educators there. Educators, educators everywhere. Educators, educators, educators. And so the chants give the students an opportunity to get up and move, and also to practice all of that academic vocabulary in a very non-threatening way. And I usually did one chant a week, and then I would post a recording of myself doing the chant into Google Classroom, and then also into Seesaw, so that the students could continue to practice. So let me grab my PowerPoint there. Let's see. Chants. Okay. So in Seesaw, what I would do with the chant for independent work is I would embed a video of myself doing the chant with the movements here. And then what the students would do is the students would get to do the chant and record themselves, and then also do a little sketch that goes along with it. So just giving the kids a different opportunity to process that information. So I'm going to show you an example of student work. If any of you were in Kim's presentation this morning at 8 on connecting with children, she talked about using blogs so that kids could interact with each other. Seesaw has an embedded blog. And for any of you that haven't used Seesaw yet, there is a 60-day free at the beginning, plus you can get an additional 30 days free on top of that. So all of the features that you see, you can use for up to 3 months without having to pay for anything. Sorry, it's loading. So here within the blog, you can see some of the student work, and I wanted to show you one of the chants that the kids did. Find Karina here. Let me make sure that my share has sound on so you can hear her. So in Karina's, she did, so we have our here, there chant. You'll see that we highlighted those important scientific words. She has her sketch, and here's her recording.
Animals here, animals there. Animals, animals everywhere. Desert animals burrowing slowly. Winter animals hibernating quietly. Jungle animals camouflaging carefully. And all animals adapting quickly. Animals in the soaring desert. Animals under the thick shrubs. Animals inside the cactus. Animals above the trees. Animals here, animals there. Animals, animals everywhere. Animals, animals, animals.
So one of the wonderful things is, again, the students can record and then you can hear them actually saying it. oftentimes in the whole group Zoom meeting, you can't hear an individual student, or you have them all on mute, so you hear nobody. But with the recording option, you're able to hear them using the language. And I would do this at the end of the week so that we've had plenty of chances to practice. Students can also do a video embedding of themselves doing the chant and the movement. However, I only requested the kids did the audio for our lesson. Many of you, I'm sure, remember the Cognitive Content Dictionary. Very big activity that can be done outside of a unit as well. I used the standard poster again, and this one I did make large size. For me, just because I already had it pre-made sitting in my office before we school closured, and so I just continued to use it, but you could use it on a small paper with your document camera as well. So for this activity, I broke it down into the different steps that I took to complete it. As you may remember, it's a week-long activity, so a lot of different components. So I started a whole group where I introduced the new word to the students, and then I did the quick tally of who had heard the word and who had never heard the word. Then in independent activities, I took the kids into Seesaw, where I had them write their individual prediction for what the word means. Then in whole group, the next day or 2 days later, depending on when I explicitly taught that the meaning of that word, as a whole group, we would talk about the final meaning and where we identified that final meaning. And then we would do a quick word study. Depending on your grade level, it might be syllabication, it might be parts of speech, it could be the history of the word. And then we modeled oral sentences. And this is a great activity if you have ELD instructional aid coming in or a morning supervisor coming in to visit, just practicing with the kids how to use that word in a strong sentence. Because then their next activity would be to record in Seesaw their own oral sentence using the word. And I'm going to show you some examples of the kids, because really seeing the kids' examples is the best way to know how well GLAD can work with Seesaw as well as virtual learning. So I'm looking at my notes where I wrote down which kids have that saved in their blog. So for David, he has his oral sentence here. So for these kids in the background, I just put some pictures to kind of give them something to look at, to give them something to talk about in case they didn't have any ideas how they might use the word in a sentence. So here's his recording.
An adaptation for a tiger is to hide in the weeds, waiting for the prey to come, and then use his claw or sharp teeth to jump at the prey, and then use his sharp claw or sharp teeth to bite or splash the prey, and then it hibernates with the tigers, all the tigers, and then keep warm so they can hibernate and get food and keep it in their tummies.
And I just wanted to let you know that when listening to these, just keep in mind, summer school was all level 1, level 2, and novice EL students. So he was able to use the word adaptation within his sentence, and then also you probably heard a lot of other academic vocabulary that we had been practicing. And because it's him on his own time doing an independent recording, he felt a lot less stress or anxiety about performing in front of other kids. He was just sharing with me what he wanted to learn or what he wanted to share. And then I would ask their permission if I could post it to the blog for other kids to listen to as well. Homeschool connections, works out perfectly because the kids are all at home. So hopefully there is an adult somewhere around them that they can do these connections with. For homeschool connections, I went straight into independent work and created the activity within Seesaw. And then a way to kind of double dip, 2 birds with 1 stone type of thing, was I created my homeschool connections not exactly the way they were used in a unit, but to better connect with additional resources I wanted the students to access, as well as activities we were doing in class. So having them do a narrative retell to someone in their home, or simply sharing something new that they learned based on the whole group lesson that we had just presented. But of course, connecting to all of those outside online resources, which you couldn't do in class with the paper one, but because you can create links in Seesaw, I could have them link to a Brain Pop video, and then that would be their homeschool connection. Watch this video with your parents, talk about what you learned. A mystery science had so many great mini lessons that were perfect for linking in, as well as different YouTube videos. National Geographic Kids has so many. For this one that you see here in the example, since we were studying animal adaptations, I had the kids link to the live cams that were at the zoos. So many zoos, aquariums during closures added additional live cams or included virtual field trips that the kids could participate in. So those kids who didn't have those real life experiences could still participate via all of the virtual platforms and then participate in the homeschool connection, rather than saying, I've never been to a zoo, so I couldn't complete this homeschool connection. Then in small group, we would look at the activity, the completed activities together. In Seesaw, you are able to see which students completed the activity and which students didn't, kind of in a tile format. And that is where the problem solving piece came in that we use in regular in-person GLAD. If a student didn't have it, we would ask, well, how do you solve that problem? And the students can think and respond back, I will do it as soon as we finish our small group meeting, or I'm going to write down on a Post-it note that I need to do that next. So again, giving them those opportunities to solve their own problems and be responsible for their learning. The big book, I think this is way easier virtually than it is in person. In Google Slides, you create the pictures of the big book and then just read it out loud with the kids. And I suggest recording that one so the kids can listen to it over and over and over again. Examples of fluency, as well as being able to access all the academic vocabulary in print and being able to see images that help them connect to what those words mean. In Seesaw, then, I created an independent activity where they would view the recording of my big book reading, and then in a learning log, very similar to what they would do in class, I would be able to type out the prompt so that they can access them over and over again if they need to. And within the activity, they could either type, they could also write using a pencil, what they learned, and again, they can do recordings. And then these three little dots allow them to insert additional images. So if they have something saved to Google Drive or another picture that they want to drag and drop in, they can do that as well. So it just gives so many opportunities for students to share their learning in so many different ways. We're going to take a moment to do a turn and talk, but because it's virtual, it's now called a stop and chat or sketch. So I give the students the opportunity to chat in the chat box, depending on grade level, or maybe they just have a piece of paper and they're sketching out or writing down what they want to share, and then they may share it with you, by holding up on the screen. So for turn and talk or stop and chat for us, stop and chat in the chat box. Which strategy that we've talked about so far could you implement next week? What would you need to do to prepare? And we're going to take just a minute to do that because it's a recording. And then we'll go through and just read out some of the things in the chat box there. Awesome. I see lots of 3 personal standards, scouts, chants, so many things that require this much preparation, which is exactly what we need right now because there's so many other things to prep. And as teachers, we are fabulous managers when it comes to in-person learning, but like I've seen the memes online, this year we're all first-year teachers. This is new to all of us. All right, we're going to get into some of the heavier strategies here, but the good thing is a lot of the ways that you implement are similar across the different strategies in the input category. So for graphic organizer, I did it whole group and I used the large map because I wanted to be able to put large pictures on it. You can also do this via Jamboard or Google Docs, but for me the easiest way, because I already had PFCs printed out from a prior lesson, was to redraw the map and use my document camera behind me and put this up on up on the wall and then record it from there. So same thing, I have the kids say it with me. I have the kids read it with me when I visit it for the second time. And I'm adding lots of word cards, lots of picture file cards to make it more comprehensible. And then what I did after I did that is I took a picture of the graphic organizer that we created together and put it into Jamboard. And if you are not familiar with Jamboard, in the chat box, go ahead and say, I need the Jamboard tutorial. Tammy Berry created an amazing tutorial that explains how to use Jamboard. It's so easy to use and it's already embedded within Google Classroom. So I will make sure to save the chat and get that tutorial sent out to you if you do not have it yet. So let's take a look at Jamboard here. So I took a picture of the map that we created, and then for the ELD review or small group that I'm pulling, I have a list of different activities. I would ask the kids to point to the equator, and they can use over here, there's a laser pointer, and they can point to the equator. And the cool thing about the laser pointer is once they do it, then it goes away. And I can invite the students all into this Jamboard by sharing the link with them. So I'm going to test that out with you right here. So anyone with the link can view. I'm going to copy that link. And here in the chat box, if you want to try out Jamboard, whoops, not just to Janine, let's talk to everybody. There we go. So if you click there, it should take you into Jamboard. Ah, I see people coming in. And if you go to the highlighter, you can go ahead and show me the equator.
Since it's view only, I believe that we can't manipulate the.
Oh, sorry. Now you can. So much fun. And then what I do with the kids, I would do the point two activities and then take it to the next level. Is South America a continent? Yes or no? Please use your highlighter to circle yes or no. And if you notice, you can see the little faces of the kids and the colors that they are. So usually in a small group, you only have 4 to 5 kids, so you would know who's doing what. But with 15 of you, it's a little bit harder to tell. And then taking it to the next level. Is South America a continent or an ocean? Please circle your response. You can also embed in some sentence frames that we often use in GLAD in person. So I was calling a specific student, I would say, Florence, let's use the sentence frame together. The dolphin lives in the, and then Florence would be able to share that with me in our small group. So just a strategy that you can use using the the Jamboard here. So I am going to, you can stay in the Jamboard if you like, but I am going to take us back out into our PowerPoint. So for the graphic organizer in small group, we do the Jamboard, and then in Seesaw, notice the same map. I just took a black and white map from Google Images, and then I created some little drag and drop words here, and the students would be able to refer back to the picture, which I post in Google Classroom or in Seesaw in the announcement section, and they can move the different pieces to create the map. And then in the instructions, I believe I also asked them to please draw in the equator. So just making sure that they understand the big pieces for the world map. Then the final thing you can also add in is the learning log, which you saw on a previous activity, putting in a specific writing prompt for connecting for text as well as to you for a connection to yourself. Pictorial input, very similar in how you would do it with the students. Whole group going over the large poster size drawing, record it so that you can embed it into the Seesaw activity later. Same thing, I would take a picture of this, drop it into Jamboard, and do those same activities. Point to, yes or no, this or that, short answer, including sentence frames. For Seesaw, I would have the drawing here, and notice the scaffold of the colors match to the different categories to help the students drag them into the right area, as well as some picture file cards to help make it more comprehensible. They can put in the picture. For example, the scorpion goes into the prey section, the cactus goes into the habitat section. Special features, this owl is only 4 to 5 inches tall. All those different pieces they can drag in to their independent activity. So a sample of what the students did here, this was one of their favorite ones here. For the drag and drop, we have Jasmine. So here is Jasmine's.
The elf owl had large round eyes to hunt.
So that's Jasmine's drawing here, drag and drop, and then also recording of what she learned. And then for the learning log, grab Dennis. So here Dennis has his 3 facts about owls, what he thought was most interesting, and then also
Owls live in the desert. They have big eyes to see what they fly fast. I think the big eyes is the most interesting part.
So it was a little bit quiet. You couldn't see that there. If you couldn't hear that there, he does read all of his pieces very fluently. And then as a teacher or a visitor to the blog, you can comment in there. Nice job including complete sentences in your facts about the elf owl. And the student would receive that comment. Another awesome piece is as a comment, teachers can also do an audio recording. Hey Dennis, awesome job with all of your information. I loved learning with you, and I can't wait to see what else we learn together. So the kids being able to hear your voice as a comment is, again, a wonderful way to make a connection because they are so missing that by not being with us in the classroom. Narrative input, storytelling, still just as valuable as it is in real life. So for the narrative input, you would use your regular whole group Zoom meeting, read the story through for fluency. Same thing, I would show the pictures of the different pieces, telling the story, and then I would privately do a recording of it so that I could embed that into an activity where the students would be able to listen to the story over and over again. And then I would also use that in my homeschool connections. That way the kids can listen to the story with the family member and then retell it to them. So that's even better. They can take you home with them to share the story and not have to remember every little piece. So they can have a little front loading before they share with their family. And then in ELD group frame, which is a little bit different than the other ELD review, I had the kids work with me on whiteboard, and I assigned them each a color, and then I would type out what that student said in their particular color. In ELD group frame in class, you would use a marker. That's the one where you hand the kids the different markers and then take that marker and write for them. So here, if you look, you can tell Vicky had a lot to say. There's a lot of pink going on around here. David had a lot to say. Dennis didn't share anything this day. Kevin had one sentence and Jenny had one sentence to share. So it gave me a very informal, assessment of what these kids know and also who's very fluent in using these words. Then an independent activity, I had the students listen to me doing the retell in a video and then complete the story map, which is pretty similar to what they would do in a team task. Because we can't do team tasks, the independent activities in Seesaw pretty much take the place of that. Sentence patterning chart is always a student favorite. In the sentence patterning chart, I used a small sheet of paper, just regular 8.5 by 11 sheet, still taped to my wall here in front of me. And using the document camera, we would go through and do the chant as a whole group. I would have them all turn their mics on. It does get a little crazy, but that's okay. That's just how teaching and learning is sometimes. Then in small group, to lower the affective filter, we would practice it again. Because I want them to build that confidence to know the tune, because eventually in Seesaw, they would create their own chants inside of the Seesaw activity. So the little girl who did this one is Katie. And Katie, I taught last year in summer school and this year in summer school, and she very rarely talked during whole group instruction. But if you listen to her here, you would never, ever think that. She sounds so confident.
The cute, silly animal, the cute, silly animal, the cute, silly animal, run slowly on the grass.
And when you hear something like that from a kid who never volunteers during whole group instruction or small group instruction, it just warms your heart to know, okay, we lowered that affective filter, gave her the confidence that she needed, and she created an amazing sentence and was very articulate with all of the vocabulary. In Jamboard, you can also create the reading trading game, which, as many of you might remember, it's so much fun. But for online learning, you have to do it differently. So I didn't have exactly the right colors, but close enough. For red, I created adjective cards. I used the list that we created in class to create the Post-it notes. So I have the reds, I have my noun, I have all of our verbs, our adverbs were in blue, I didn't have purple Post-it notes, and then prepositional phrases. Then in small group, the students can make the sentences and choose where they go, and together we would read them. And that's created in Jamboard. So for this one, the cool thing about Jamboard is you can share it with an individual student. Tammy goes over that in her video, or you can share it with a small group of kids in Google Classroom. Whole class mind map, this one, you just do it regular style with a document camera. You have the kids turn their audio on, they share out the information to you, and then you ask them to please stop sharing once I write it down. Very similar to how live instruction goes. I use just regular 8.5 by 11 paper, but you can also use chart paper, large size if you want to. And then expert group text. When I found out we were doing distance learning summer school and I was doing a GLAD unit, I thought there is no way this is going to happen. But it happened. In Seesaw, I just copy and pasted each of the paragraphs of information. And if you notice here, you can see there's 5 slides. Each page has 1 paragraph. and we did one paragraph at a time. And then at the end, you can see the mind map here that the kids were able to fill out. So very similar to the way you do it in real life. It's just that it's done online, virtually in small group. So this would be a great activity to do in that after lunch period, or during your small group times with kids. And just to note, it does take several days to complete, just like in real life. It wasn't a one visit kind of thing. And you also need to have Seesaw Plus, which is free for the 60 days if you initially start to use the program, because you need the draft feature, which allows you to stop and pause and then come back to it later. And also as a teacher, so that you can create multiple page assignments. Process grid, I used a large paper, again, just because I already had it made in my office, and because I was planning to do a unit before school closure. So I had a lot of the charts already just sitting in my office waiting for me. But you can do it on small paper as well. But you'll notice we only completed 2 rows. And that is it. The first row is the one that we did with the pictorial with everyone. And then the second row was the one that we did with the expert groups. And if you don't get to the expert groups, that's okay. You can still get to the amazing cooperative strip paragraph if you only complete the first row of the process grid. And so the cooperative strip paragraph, again, was something I was thinking, there's no way this is going to happen in distance learning. And it did. I invited the kids in whole group to listen to the topic sentence. So you'll see it here. This summer, we learned a lot of facts about an animal called the elf owl. And then the students went off into their individual activities. And when I pulled small group, each of my small groups created one sentence. So my green group that I met with, first we talked about what kind of words are important. Our topic was habitat. What words do we need to have in our sentence? Then as a group, we created this sentence together in the whiteboard. I did all of the typing, they did all of the oral sharing. Then my red group, we met, we talked about the words we wanted, we created the sentence. And then you'll see we took that sentence and put it together in a Google Doc when we met whole group, and then just go through that revise and edit checklist, just like you would in class, highlighting the important words that we want in our paragraph, changing the order of the sentences. This one way easier online than it would have been in person. I just copy and paste into a different section, going through and making the edits. That part is a little different because you can't see the edits that we made with the line outs, changing of the words. But in the end, we still get a cooperative strip paragraph that we made together. And then I copied it, put it into Seesaw where the students were able to share it with families at home. So here in the blog, we have David. So here you can see David has it, and the only thing to do here, just like you would do in regular class, is to practice reading it.
This summer, we learned a lot of facts about an animal called the elf owl. The elf owl lives in the desert habitat, which is dry and hot.
So if you want to go back and see that, you can through the PDF. You can access the blog, it's live. And then finally, the last component was add to the walls. In Jamboard, I simply took a picture of all of the charts that we made, and I took all of those charts, put them into a giant Jamboard, and shared with each individual student. And from there, the students were able to put Post-it notes, add pictures, just like they would do in our real life classroom. But it's an individual one for them that they were able to access and add to the walls. So if you look here, you'll see a picture of our world map. And then these little things here were added on the Jamboard. So this Post-it says, my family lives in Japan, and then added an extra picture of the elf owl. And all of those are accessible through the tool board from the Jamboard. All right, and we're gonna go into the chat box.